We are so excited to continue our interactive partner workshops of the 2021 Borlaug Dialogue. This dynamic new component focuses on tools and programs. This workshop, Antimicrobial Resistance, Preventing the Silent Pandemic in Food Systems, organized by the Embassy of the United Kingdom to the US, showcases the emerging threat of antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, to human, animal, and environmental health. As the threat of AMR to our food systems progresses, it's vital to engage and evaluate strategies already being effectively used worldwide. This workshop highlights the importance of international collaboration and working with partners far and wide to counter pressing challenges in global food security. Enjoy the next hour and learn more about AMR and what is needed to tackle this problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for that. I'm hoping you can all hear me now. And welcome to this workshop. You really have tuned into the right workshop. Let me introduce myself. I'm kind of convening this afternoon from London. I'm Sally Davis. I'm the UK government's Special Envoy on Antimicrobial Resistance. So what I'm going to do is set the scene, then we're going to have some short presentations, some case studies, and a discussion. And we really want you to join in and ask the questions you care about. So, of course, we all know that antibiotics matter to everybody, every person, every animal, and every plant on our planet, that they're precious resources and they're the cornerstone for modern medicine for humans and, of course, also for animals. People forget that. But we have to beat bacterial infections wherever they are, if they're infections rather than just bacteria living with us. And because of antimicrobial treatments, we can tackle diseases that were not treatable before, whether it's HIV or malaria. Because of them, antibiotics in general, we can manage to operate on people. We can give cancer chemotherapy safely and so much more. But we must never forget that animals are vulnerable to all of the same bacterial infections as people. Think of pneumonia or TB. So antibiotics and antimicrobials means veterinarians can treat the animals too. And it's keeping our animals healthy that in turn enable farmers to keep our food supply safe and free of harmful bacteria, but also economically to provide for their families. So the food system depends on healthy animals and plants. Let me invite you to think of a world in which antibiotics don't work and can't treat common infections. Imagine a hospital that can't do a hip operation for fear of spreading infection. Imagine a farm that can't treat sick animals, or a supermarket with no meat supply, or even a country with a threatened food security situation. Actually, sadly, this isn't really so difficult to imagine, is it? Because, as they say, the future is here somewhere, and this is happening right now, somewhere across the world. Because, you see, bacteria and other infectious agents are hardwired to survive, and we use antibiotics to fight back, but increasingly we're becoming less and less successful because the bacteria and other microbes are becoming resistant to treatment. They're becoming superbugs. And when our medicines can't fight back, we call this antimicrobial resistance, or that indigestible title, AMR. Of course, when animals are sick, we want to treat them, if it's bacteria, with antibiotics. But the sad reality is that increasing global meat demand at lower and lower prices means that over 70% of farmed animals around the world now live in intensive farm systems. And that's where the animals are kept in densely populated facilities, and that makes them prone to illness and disease. Intensive farming often relies on pumping animal feed and water with antibiotics for preventive use. This is used as a cheaper alternative to good animal husbandry and farm hygiene, and as a way to promote a little more growth. So, a faster and cheaper way to market. But it, at the same time, compromises animal welfare and farm and food hygiene. According to the US Food and Drug Administration, up to 80% of all antibiotics across the world are used in farming, up to 80%. Rather than in human patients, that leaves us just over 20%. And do you know, chickens and pigs consume far more antibiotics than any humans do. And this overuse of antibiotics in protein and plant supply chains is a leading cause of AMR. Without the ability to treat sick animals effectively, our food security is reaching cliff edge. Our dependence on antibiotics has become so excessive that these superbugs I've been talking about present a super risk by increasing prevalence of antibiotic bacteria in livestock, in poultry, and aquaculture, fish farming. Our food systems risk becoming unsustainable. And food and health, we know, are linked in many complicated ways. Actually, one big reason is because of the pee and poop. Up to 90% of antibiotics that humans and animals consume is pooed and peeped out, which ends up in the fields, the rivers and seas around us. A recent rather ghastly study of an informal fish market in Zimbabwe found that all but one of bacterial species was 100% resistant to more than 3 antibiotic treatments. And the causes were most likely raw sewage and human waste in nearby rivers and lakes. So we can't separate the impacts on health equity, food security, and environmental biodiversity. Like COVID-19, AMR's devastating and far-reaching impacts on local, national, and global health systems, food systems, economies, security, and trade are just there and getting bigger. It isn't an issue for the future. Deaths are happening right now. More than 700,000 people die every year because of drug-resistant infections, and this silent pandemic is on the rise. And, you know, without action, we're expecting 1 death from AMR every 3 seconds by 2050. At the moment, McDonald's sell over 220 hamburgers in that time, but it's pretty horrible to think about. COVID-19 is the acute pandemic with visible and systemic impacts. It reverberates across our whole world. But AMR's that chronic and silent pandemic that grows rather difficultly, and what a bore, but it's there growing in the background. And sadly, like COVID-19, AMR has disproportionate health and economic consequences for people in low and middle income countries and those with limited resources. 90% of all deaths occurring in Africa and Asia. Do you know that AMR could push an additional 28 million people into poverty by 2050 if we don't take action? And it puts every corner of the globe and every sector of society, economy, food, health security, trade and environmental systems at risk. For instance, we've even got studies that show resistance being found in the remote islands of the Galapagos and on the International Space Station. So let me put it simply. AMR puts the SDGs at risk, us humans at risk, and it means we have no assurance of healthy lives or well-being, or an end to poverty, or an ability to feed ourselves or secure decent work. Alongside climate change, AMR is a global emergency and a multiplier of threats to our planet. Yesterday's side event hosted by the British Consul General in Chicago explored those links between agriculture and net zero ahead of the COP26 summit in UK next month. But 2030 is much less than a decade away. And by 2030, global consumption of antimicrobials in farm animals is projected to increase by 2/3 more than now. And by 2050, we're expecting, and projections show, 100 million people killed prematurely. We've got a choice, though, as a world. We can produce and consume food differently, but we've got to take immediate action. And as this workshop shows, we've got to work together to innovate and promote alternatives, thus saving lives of animals and us. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization's Action Plan on AMR recognizes the need to drive change in practices that lead to AMR, in particular, improving the responsible and sustainable use of antimicrobials in the food chain and agriculture. We've got the Global Leaders Group on AMR, set up by the UN Tripartite. I'm honoured to be a member, and we're calling for innovation and sustainable alternatives to antimicrobials in food systems. We need innovative, cheaper ways of delivering biosecurity and enabling responsible and sustainable farming to meet global demand for protein. We need solutions tailored to and sustainable for the farmers who work and live on farms. So I'm delighted today that we're going to hear from the International Centre for AMR Solutions, ICARS, who are doing a great job. They work closely with low and middle income countries to advance their efforts in tackling AMR and find practical solutions across the One Health spectrum. We're going to hear from our own UK Global AMR Innovation Fund, Gamma-Riff, with supports through a One Health approach, early stage research in neglected and underinvested areas of AMR R&D. And I hope we're going to hear more about how those two, ICARS and Gamma-Riff, have today wonderfully, congratulations, announced a partnership working with Colombia on diagnostics for pork. And we're going to hear from World Fish, whose research and innovation seeks to promote sustainable aquaculture. Terribly important, with fisheries using evidence-based solutions to end hunger and advance sustainable development. Yes, AMR is a complex challenge. AMR has many drivers leading to the emergence and transmission of it. However, we mustn't let our protein consumption be the death knell for the planet or modern medicine. We can fish better, we can farm better, and we can eat better, though probably less meat in the developed world. This is a planetary emergency. So now I'm going to hand over to those doing the presentations. Let's start with the ICARS model. Garda Zubian, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dame Sally, for the introduction. I'm going to try to share my slides. Hopefully you will be able to see it in a minute. Is it clear at your end, please?
Not yet. I can't see your slides. I wonder if we've shared the hosting with you. Kyle, can your technical people look at that?
It's fine. I will try again. And here we go. Let's try one more time.
That looks, yes, that's worked. Well done.
After 2 years of online, I'm sure eventually I'll get it right. So, right. So thank you very much, Dame Sally Davis, for your introduction, and very much thanks to the British Embassy for putting this session together. My name is Garda Zubian. I'm the head of partnerships and stakeholder engagement at ICARS. And this is indeed a very timely session, especially that with COVID, it has again confirmed to us that one-sided approach is not really effective, especially when we are dealing with pandemics such as COVID and AMR. There is a crucial need for science and policy interface, science informing policy, but equally as important for policy to inform the type of science that we conduct and we need. That pathogen, they do not respect any border, of course, but that national effort and global effort should really be aligned, because even when there is a global response to pandemics, there is really a need to look at the context where some of the countries are implementing their intervention. And while most of the intervention are monosectorial, for pandemic like AMR, really we need to have a One Health lens to achieve impact on the long run. And even though there have been many interventions for AMR that have been developed over the years, primarily in the high-income country, but some even in low-resource setting, but there are very few that have been successful, and only really a fraction that have been pursued to be being more implemented at a larger level, especially in low-resource setting. That's because in many instances, there's a lack of political commitment to advance some of these interventions. It could be that the business model is not as strong, that many countries with competing priority cannot prioritize AMR intervention, but as well, there is a lack of ownership in some of these interventions because the right stakeholder may not have been engaged at early stages. And many of these interventions have primarily led to academic output rather than a policy impact. And last but not least, there is a lack of human and infrastructure resources in many of these countries, which makes it very difficult to have these scalable, successful interventions that not only look at developing the solution, but as well in implementing it into the country. So this is where ICARs come. We come because we believe that to reduce drug-resistant infection, there is a need for solutions that are evidence-based, they're very much context-specific, very importantly for it to be cost-effective, to allow us to have more sustainable solution. And as I mentioned, covering the One Health lens will be crucial in many instances, and thus closing the gap between policy and practice. Our mission is to partner with low middle income countries' ministries to co-create and co-develop these interventions and to make sure that these solutions could be implemented at a larger scale. We not only provide funding, but as well expertise and our overall support to the different projects. And we have a very broad strategy, intentionally so. 4 different pillars that are very interconnected. One of them is to really look at developing these interventions and using implementation research to generate those evidence. And Dr. Van will be presenting one of those projects a little later. But as well, we do acknowledge there's a large amount of evidence that's already out there and even a lot of innovation. And it would be really good for us to look at how some of these intervention and evidence could be translated into policy and practice, including the innovation and the project that Dame Sally has just mentioned that we have announced today that I will touch upon a little bit later. Third, we do really believe that advocating nationally and globally for the need of intervention and implementation research is crucial to advance AMR mitigation. We need to mobilize more resources, more effort into it, and we need to highlight the impact that this type of research is needed for. And lastly, but not least, is actually the need for very targeted approach to capacity and capability, where we can support policymaker as well as researcher in low middle income country to develop their skill in intervention and implementation research. Our model is a top-down, bottom-up approach, very much engaging with government at a diplomatic level, as well as building on their national action plan, but very much rooted within the local research community as well as the existing evidence. We don't believe that we can do things on our own. We're actually very keen to have partnership with existing initiative and programs to add to them, to add value to them, and to make sure we avoid repeating the same project again and again. We're currently spreading our wings across the low middle income countries. 2 projects have kickstarted in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, more in co-development in Sub-Saharan Africa, South America, Southeast Asia, more in Central Asia and Eastern Europe. And very pleased really that we are announcing today the partnership between the UK Department of Health Gamma-Riff program, which is really close to my heart, and the ICARs with Port Columbia as well, to look at uptake of existing diagnostic platform. These innovations have been there, but have had challenges to being implemented within the farming system. And Port Columbia will be doing a great job to look at these platforms and to make sure it support the farmers, not only to reduce antimicrobial use, but as well to improve sanitary status of the farms. So we're open for business, open for partnership with low middle income countries government, with potential donor and supporting member, as well as programs that are already existing there, looking at AMR specific and AMR sensitive type of activities. And with this, I'm really pleased to stop sharing my slides and introduce my colleague at Gamma-Riff, Dr. Shahida Sayed, who's actually the project lead for Gamma-Riff for her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gada, for that. I will start sharing. Can everyone see the screen? Yeah. Okay. Right. So thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm the project lead for the Global AMR Innovation Fund, or Gamma-Riff, as we like to shorten it, here at the UK Department of Health and Social Care. And I'll just go into presentation mode. Right. So, yeah, short overview. So Gamma-Riff is a £65 million UK aid fund, and we support early stage innovative research, particularly focusing on neglected and underinvested areas of AMR research and development. And obviously, being a UK aid program, that means all of the research that we fund is for the benefit of people in developing countries. So Gamma-Riff is really established around kind of three core principles, which is that we establish international research partnerships using a One Health approach. So despite being in the Department of Health, we fund research in human health, animal health, and the environment. We very much work globally to deliver our research programs and the research, working with foreign governments, non-profit organizations, industry, academia, and others. And a very important objective for us, being a relatively small fund in this area, which requires huge amounts of investment, is that through the strategic partnering that we do, we leverage investment from other donors into the areas that we fund. And I just wanted to mention a final bit there, which is that we've obviously had lots of learnings thinking about kind of the first iteration of Gamma-Riff. The UK government is currently undergoing its spending review when it's setting the budget this time for the next 3 years. So we've obviously put a bid in to have a Gamma-Riff 2.0 because we quite like to continue our work that we started. And one of the main learnings that we have done, and should we be successful in our bid, is that the next stage of Gamma-Riff will really focus on also maximizing the impact of our investments by ensuring that the innovations that we do invest in are accessible and adopted by those who most need them. And I'm very pleased to say that obviously our partnership with ICARS already fits into this objective really, really nicely. So just a little bit of background to Gamma-Riff. So Gamma-Riff was launched in 2016 as one of the UK government's responses to the seminal report by Lord Jim O'Neill, the review on AMR. So it was so this report, there were several reports rather published across kind of 2014 to 2016, and I'd say that this report was instrumental in really having the world understand that we must take action now. One of the many recommendations that came out of this report was the call for a global fund for early stage research, where there was a lack of commercial imperative. So we know that the antibiotic market, or the market failure, is significant when it comes to antibiotic development. So little investment is actually going into this. And that's obviously because there's very little return on that investment. Antibiotics are dirt cheap, but they still take up a lot of resource, a lot of time, and a lot of money to develop. And so one of the many approaches to tackle this, the UK government decided to launch Gamma-Riff as a push funding mechanism. And obviously, we've already heard really nicely from Dame Sally and Gada why we should be taking a One Health approach. So I won't repeat those messages. It's clear. But what I do want to say is to take that parallel to COVID-19. Like with COVID, we urgently need tools to tackle AMR, things like diagnostics, vaccines, therapeutics, and beyond. And so with that, I just wanted to quickly show you the Gamma-Riff portfolio. So we have 8 research programs currently in our portfolio. If you want to learn more about each of the programs, please do have a look at our landing page on gov.uk. But as you can see, this has now been separated according to the One Health sectors, and we've got programs focusing on human health, but also animal health and the intersections in between. What you might not be able to tell from the slide, but we work very globally. We have partnerships with Carbex, for instance, in the US, IDRC in Canada, back-to-back in the UK, ICARS now in Denmark, and we also work with bilaterally with Argentina and China. I wanted to specifically draw your attention to the Innovate AMR program that we have with the International Research Centre in Canada. This is a fantastic research program which is focusing on developing vaccines and alternatives to antimicrobials, in particularly swine, poultry, and aquaculture. And I'm very pleased that we will be hearing a case study today by Dr. Dong, who will be presenting a project under this research program. Gamma-Riff is sort of midway through implementation. Obviously, we've had to deal with a lot of project extension and research program extensions due to COVID. But so far, we have funded 68 R&D projects and engaged more than 100 researchers from over 30 LMIC research institutions. So we have impact in over 30 countries globally as well. And we have also managed to leverage over 60 million in additional AMR R&D investment from the other donors through the strategic partnering that we have made. And just quickly looking at the portfolio that we have at the moment, it's a very varied portfolio, but a large part of the investment does go to vaccines and alternatives. And you obviously see the kind of the split according to the One Health sectors. To the right, but we do also fund obviously diagnostics, but also husbandry practices, waste management, and so on and so forth. So that was a very quick presentation on Gamma-Riff, and I wanted to say thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present Gamma-Riff here. If you want to learn more about Gamma-Riff, and particularly if we're successful in our bid for more funding, please do check out the landing page on gov.uk. Please do check out the Innovate AMR webpage as well. It's got fantastic information about all the projects that we're supporting. And finally, I want to leave you with the Innovate AMR podcast. It's amazing. It's a podcast that the IDRC gang in Canada have produced. The first episode features our own Dame Sally. So please do listen to that if you get a chance. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Chadag. So Dr. Chadag has extensive experience and expertise in aquaculture, having worked in the sector for over 20 years, and he will be presenting the activities in World Fish. So thank you. I'll stop sharing now. Yeah.
Thank you, Said. Let me just start sharing my screen. Is it visible? Is it visible?
Yeah, we can see that now.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. At the outset, let me thank the organizers and the World Food Prize Foundation for giving me the opportunity to share the work of WorldFish and its partners on antimicrobial use as well as antimicrobial resistance issues in the aquatic food systems. WorldFish, our mission is an inclusive world of healthy, well-nourished people and a sustainable blue planet now and for the future. Our mission is to end hunger and advance sustainable development goals by 2030 through science and innovation to transform food, land, and water systems with aquatic foods for healthier people and planet. We are part of one CGIAR, and as you can see from the map, we are working largely in Asia and Africa with a global presence in over 20 countries, 3 continents, close to 450 staff members working of 30 nationalities, working to promote the benefits of aquatic food systems to the health and health of people and the planet. If you look at aquatic food systems, and the planetary health. Recently, there's a lot of recognition for aquatic foods, and they've been perceived as very essential for nourishing nations, also for transforming food systems. There is no point in talking about food system transformation, leaving out aquatic food systems. Fisheries and aquaculture, they play a great role in delivering healthy diets and more sustainable, equitable, and resilient food systems around the world. Recently, the Blue Foods Assessments publications have clearly shown the role of aquatic food systems for the future. But our major challenge is to transform aquatic food systems so it can do better for humans in terms of safe and healthy food, better for animals in terms of no or less disease, and better for the environment in terms of sustainability and trying to keep the environment clean within planetary boundaries. If you look at aquaculture growth and the challenges, the global demand for aquatic foods is believed to roughly estimated to double by 2050, and aquaculture is predicted to meet most of this demand, complementing captive fisheries. And aquatic foods were found to rank more highly than terrestrial animal source foods in terms of their nutritional benefits and potential for sustainability gains. This is again proved beyond any doubt. Aquatic food systems, unfortunately, face the highest risk from both climate change and disease. And both of these are felt in those regions of the world, like the low, medium income countries, where people rely on them most and where they are least equipped to respond and adapt to these climate hazards as well as disease risks. And one of the key drivers for AMU use in aquatic systems is diseases. And disease is a major bottleneck for aquatic farming systems. But what is very interesting is majority of the infectious diseases in aquatic farming systems are of viral etiology, for which there is no effective treatment. But when you consider the farmers in many of the low, medium income countries, etiology makes little sense compared to mortalities. So the moment there is mortality, they resort to treatments, including use of antimicrobial agents. Now, antimicrobial use in aquaculture differs significantly from that of livestock farming systems because of the aquaculture's great diversity of species, farming systems, and even the mode of administration of antibacterials to the fish and farmed aquatic animals. If you look at our understanding of AMU and AMR in aquatic food systems, this is very, very limited. The decision of the primary producers, the farmers, to resort to antimicrobial use is not his own. It's influenced significantly by several actors, principally his own neighbors and peers, input suppliers, extension service providers, consultants, and including regulators. So understanding the behavior and practice of farmers and all the value chain actors is vital if you were to design effective practical interventions to tackle AMR issues in aquatic food systems. One more major issue what we see is the advocacy, interventions, and compliance enforcements for managing AMU and AMR in aquatic foods in many of the low, medium income countries is treated in different ways. For those commodities that's meant for export, there is more regulation and more overseeing. Those commodities which is meant for domestic, there is less regulation and less overseeing. So I think this is, in the very beginning, I think this should disappear. There should not be any distinction between products meant for export versus products meant for domestic consumption if we were to really address AMU and AMR issues. And partnerships and collaboration is very, very important. And we already heard from the two previous speakers. Unless there is a good partnership and collaboration, we cannot achieve much. And WorldFish, I'm very happy to tell that over the last 5 years, we worked with large numbers of partners. Like we worked very closely with Royal Veterinary College London on trying to really apply a systems thinking approach to aquaculture and identify what are the hotspots for emergence of AMR, what are the different pathways for human exposure, what are the practical and feasible potential interventions. We applied the systems thinking approach in the catfish farming systems and tilapia farming systems and tried to address this, and these are published and available. We also work very closely with CFOS UK in relation to assessing the aquatic food systems from a One Health lens. How can we sort of map and characterize the aquatic food systems and see where and which components of One Health they really comply well with, or they are the challenges and opportunities. We are working closely with University of Exeter in UK, mainly to understand the complex dynamics of the microbiomes and how they respond to application of antimicrobial agents, and how the population dynamics of the microbes shift both in the water environment inside the host, and what implications it could have for disease and also for AMR development. We worked with Stockholm Resilience Center and University of Waterloo, Canada, and come up with learning platforms for AMR interventions and also participatory modeling approaches for understanding the risk factors and the designing of interventions. Significant work also with the University of Exeter in relation to behavior and practice with social scientists, and see how the value chain actor behavior and practice needs to be really looked into if we were to make a significant impact with respect to addressing AMR and AMU issues, not just talking to the farmers and producers. We work closely with Fleming Fund Fellowship programs, both the country programs and the fellowships. And in all the programs, especially in Asia, Bangladesh and Nigeria, we have been trying to promote embedding of aquatic food systems within the One Health work of the Fleming Fund country grants as well as the Fleming Fund fellowship programs. And if you come to CGIAR, CGIAR has got two major hubs. One is the CGIAR AMR hub and the COVID hub made within the ILRI, IFRI, INI and Worldfish. And moving forward, the One CGIAR will be launching a new initiative called One Health, which will run for nine years, where 4 key CGIAR institutions will come together to run the program, within which one of the work packages will be on AMR, giving a lot of importance to understanding AMR in low, medium income countries. And we're also working closely with several institutions on developing rapid genomic detection systems so that pathogens can be detected early and informed evidence-based decisions can be taken. And what are the actions that are required if you have to really address the principal driver, that is disease? Improve diagnostics, especially in relation to pond-side multiple pathogen detection systems, not single pathogen, but multiple pathogen detection systems, and simple, practical, farm-level biosecurity and management practice tools in the form of learning resources, app-based real-time services, things like that. Improving access to alternatives like vaccines. All of us are aware how successful the Norwegian salmon industry was, which 20, 30 years ago was heavily dependent on antibiotics, but now they rarely use anything. The entire industry is supported by vaccination and vaccine programs. And you may be surprised to see that in Norway, vaccination is mandatory. You cannot release salmon smolt into the open sea cages without them being vaccinated. So that is the level of the benefit of alternatives that we can learn from the Norwegian salmon industry. And we're also to see how best we can make available strains of fish which are disease resistant, like the Worldfish work on the genetically improved farm tilapia and the tilapia lake virus work, which has very clearly shown it is possible to incorporate disease resistant traits in some of the fish strains and make them less susceptible to some of the key diseases. So what is the way forward? As all of us have agreed, AMR is not the result of one person's action. It is the product of actions of various actors and elements in the food systems and beyond. So unless we look at the One Health framework, the One Health, the overall food system approach, and unless we come up with a collective action under a One Health framework, it will not be easy to tackle AMR issues in aquatic food systems or in terrestrial food systems. So One Health approach is a must, and it has to be a collective action, not just action burden for just the primary producers. I think it must be a collective action. And I'd like to draw the attention to the One Health wheel, which is being developed by the CFOS UK, which we are using now regularly to make assessments of the farming systems in relation to the environment component, the people component, and the animal component. And also, this is the One Health learning platform that has been made available through the Stockholm Resilience Center. So with that, let me thank you, and again thank the organizers for giving Worldfish an opportunity to share its work with partners on issues of AMR and AMU in aquatic food systems. Thank you very much. Let me stop sharing the screen.
Thank you so much, Mohan, Shahida, and Garda. Fantastic work. I'm particularly excited, as some of you may know, about the fish farming work, because, of course, the amount of protein that the humans are eating is going up greatest in fish farming. And we really need to make this safe. I've even been in vaccinated fish myself just to see how it works, Mohan. So you show us what's possible and what a lot of work we've got to do. And I think it does give us hope that we can get on top of this pandemic of AMR. But the real magic is what's going on the ground. You've tantalized us, you've teased us with this. So now we're going to showcase a couple of innovative, exciting cross-sector projects tackling AMR and bolstering food systems sustainability in countries across the world. We're going to hear first about fish jacuzzis in Thailand, and then, which is supported by ICARS, and then we're moving on to, we're doing fish vaccines in Vietnam, then we're doing fish jacuzzis after that. Sadly, the poultry nanoparticles in Brazil can't join us. So fish vaccines, over to you, Fan.
So thank you very much. So let me share the screen. Can you see now?
We can see it if you, great. Perfect.
Okay. So good evening from Vietnam. I'm Phan Thị Vấn, Director of the Research Institute for Aquaculture #1, in short, it's RIA1 in Vietnam. And today I'm to talk about a demonstration project between Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in Vietnam and the International Center for Antimicrobial Resistance Solutions in Denmark on the use of vaccine to reduce antimicrobial use in Vietnamese aquaculture, where RIA1 is the implementation institution. As you may already know, that aquaculture in Vietnam grows very fast in last few decades and plays an important role in national economy. Last year, aquaculture production in Vietnam reached more than 4.5 million tons. And as you can see from the chart, that in 2000 it were only 600,000 tons. Vietnam seafood export brings in about more than 8.5 billion US dollar in average in last recent years, and it increased more than 800% compared to the year 2000. Vietnam seafood product present in more than 145 countries and territories. Aquaculture species in Vietnam are very diversified, and 2 species are chosen for our project, are Pangasius and Tilapia. And here you could see the Tilapia and Pangasius. So Pangasius catfish is the most important aquaculture species in Vietnam, both for economic and job creation. Main production is from less than 600 hectare area in Mekong River Delta. And from this area, we produce more than 1.5 million tons of Pangasius per year. Pangasius farmers face many problems with the diseases, especially bacterial diseases. Every year, about 30% culture area got infected with the diseases. So using antimicrobial during 10 months of culture periods is what the farmers have to do to treat the bacterial disease. So other species is tilapia, which we have chosen to include in our study. So in Vietnam, culture tilapia, we culture tilapia both in freshwater and brackish water. And we grow tilapia in ponds, in cases, and so on. Although the production is not as high as Pangasius, but tilapia is more and more becoming important aquaculture species in Vietnam. So during 6 to 8 months of culture, bacterial diseases cause severe problem in about 86 to 100% tilapia aquaculture area. And tilapia farmers choose to use antimicrobial to treat the bacterial diseases. So the farmers have problem when using antimicrobial for treating the bacterial diseases, not only because of low quality of drugs, but also how to measure correctly the dose and how to mix well the drugs to the feed, because they have to mix it themselves, and as it is prohibiting to have medicated pellet feed in Vietnam. Of course, the residue is so far still good enough as we can export the products, but there is a big potential in AMR. As you can see in the picture, that the farmers use their bare hands to mix the drug with the feed, and no one in the picture has the scale to measure the doses. So there are vaccines for bacterial diseases for Pangasius and tilapia in Vietnam, but the farmers still reluctant to use it. So our project will be in place to boost up the vaccine uptake from Pangasius and tilapia culture farmers. So we will look at different angles to generate evidence and show how the uptake of vaccines can be strengthened and antimicrobial use reduced. We are going to look at the vaccination impact on production and farm practices. And also the economy factor, as you can see that the price of the fish is not high. So every percentage of input added into the cost would lead to the big impact of profit margin. We also look at the gut microflora to see the difference between the vaccinated and non-vaccinated fish, as there is a research question that the change of the flora would affect to the feed digestion and causing the differences in feed intake and FCR. Legislation support needed also will be studies to support the wider use of vaccines, and finally, the impact of increased use of vaccination and reduced use of antimicrobial on consumer perception and reputation, both domestically and internationally, of Vietnamese Pangasius and tilapia products. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, organizer, for letting me to have this chance to speak here. Thank you very much. So I will stop sharing. And now I would like to introduce that you will see a pre-recorded presentation from Dr. Sangdong on nanobubble technology used in aquaculture. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Sangdong. I'm an assistant professor from Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand. It's my truly honors to have these unique opportunities to share with you one of our investigations on nanobubble technologies and a novel strategy to combat antimicrobial resistance in modern aquaculture. It is a collaborative project between three organizations, CTU Hong Kong, led by Professor Sophie Hinari, Research Institute for Aquaculture #1 in Vietnam, led by Professor Phan Thị Vân, and Sunanta Ratchapat University, IIT, led by myself. So this project, we explore new technologies to see whether nanobubble can be used to reduce bacterial concentration in aquaculture system, whether it can reduce the risk of bacterial disease in aquaculture farm, and how it can improve immune system and efficacy of vaccine, as well as growth performance of animals. And one of our partners also look into whether these technologies can be used to remove antimicrobial that leak out from medicated feed during therapeutic treatments. And this project was funded by UK government, Department of Health and Social Care, International Development Research Center, Canada, under Innovate AMR program. So let me talk a little bit about this technology. So the picture in the left-hand side shows you how nanobubble system work assembly. It's comprised of oxygen concentrator. It will take oxygen from the air, concentrate it, and feed into ozone generator. And then ozone will be produced and feed into nanobubble generator. And within the device, water and ozone will be mixed together, become ozone nanobubble, and go out. So it depends on the types of gas that you inject in. We have different kinds of nanobubble, either air nanobubble, oxygen nanobubble, or ozone nanobubble. And then we also were successful to modify the system and assemble it in modified recirculation system that separated treatment tanks and fish culture tank. And this system have more benefit in, for multiple treatments that do not affect negatively to the fish because of ozone. And this one is, this is a water bubble come out from the device. It's milky color. So after 10-minute treatments in 50-liter tanks, it can generate 20 to 30 million bubbles per ml. And then this majorities of bubble have the size less than 100 nanometers, similar to the size of coronavirus. So we cannot see by naked eyes. And nanobubble is negatively charged with no buoyancies, so that allows the bubble have long residence in water. It can present in water for many days to several weeks or sometimes for months. And when we look into disinfectant properties of different gas bubble, and we found that only ozone nanobubble has so very excellent disinfectant properties. And then our research focused more on ozone nanobubble and to see how it can be applied in aquaculture farm. And you know that AMR is come from misuse of antimicrobials. And antimicrobial normally used for treatment of bacterial disease. So if we can prevent bacterial disease in aquaculture system, that will be the most effective way to reduce antimicrobial use and reduce AMR. So disease usually happen when there's interaction of susceptible host, conductive environment, and pathogens. So we look into how ozone nanobubble affect to the three components. For pathogen side, ozone nanobubble can reduce pathogen load in water. So in 10-minute treatments, it can reduce more than 96% of bacteria in water. And 5-minute treatment, it can reduce 100% of virus in water. And this picture shows you the morphologies of bacteria after treatment with ozone nanobubble. And this one is before treatment. So after treatment, the bacteria will get choice. And then it also have good effect to water parameters. It improves the DL. It improves. It can reduce organic load in water and reduce toxic gases. And when we look into host size, although nanobubble treatment at a safe dose, it can improve the fish immunity as well. It turns on an array of innate immune genes that play important roles for the first lines of defense system, make the fish respond more effective to infections and improve survival during bacterial infections. So it's relatively safe for fish and shrimp as well. So also nanobubble have synergistic effect to different components of aquaculture system, and it serves as very potential technologies to combat AMR. It can fight AMR in the way that it can reduce the risk of bacterial disease in aquaculture system. It's non-chemical approach, and it also can improve survival of fish during infections. And based on our understanding on these technologies, currently we recommend this for hatchery system, recirculation system, and indoor system. For pond system with large volume of water, it may be more difficult, and it requires upscale of technologies to bring to aquaculture farm. And we believe that it will be very promising for modern aquaculture, because currently a lot of aquaculture species has been shipped to indoor aquaculture. So this system will be very effective. For those who are interested in nanobubble technologies and you want to gain more knowledge about what we are doing, you can go to our publications. So there's more details on that. And currently we also have some investigations on whether nanobubble technologies can improve efficacy of vaccine and how it's affect to growth performance in long term. So I hope that we will have more data to share with you in the near future. And thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dong. How exciting to see this work from everyone. And what I'm going to do is just start with one question, which I've been sent, which is, can anyone answer, have ozone nanobubbles had an impact on intracellular pathogens like salmonella that live in individual cells? Does anyone have a view about that? No, we're going to have to find out. In that case, I'm going to go to someone who hasn't spoken yet, Anders Dalgaard from ICARS, because we've had a number of questions about bacteriophages and manure. Anders, over to you to answer the questions we've had.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And with regards to the question whether the spreading of manure on fields as low-cost fertilizer, whether that has been linked to spread of, antimicrobial resistant bacterial pathogens on specifically the question goes for silage crops. I'm not aware of studies, specifically on silage crops, but I think one should see animal manure as something that has been spread for decades on fields as important fertilizers. And throughout that period, we've had a lot of pathogens and resistances also being spread. So far, I don't think we have strong evidence that this has had any major impact on the resistant problems we see, whether this is within, the animal or public health sectors. I think when it comes to silage crops, there's often quite a long time period between the time you apply the manure until you harvest the different crops you use for silage. And in that period, you'll have a significant die-off of bacteria. The production of silage is a kind of a fermentation also, and that will also reduce the pathogens that you have. So I don't think that is of any real scale big problem. But again, I'm not aware of studies really that have documented that. Then with regards to the bacteriophages, I think for many good reasons, there's been a renewed interest to the research, that started already in the 40s and 50s a lot on using bacteriophages to treat, in particular, infections in humans, hospital infections. There's definitely great potential in this. There's a lot of work done with this also in livestock associated pathogens, and I know even also for some of the aquaculture pathogens. I still think we have quite some way to go, but I think in terms of controlling these infections, there's definitely potential. I know there's a few products marketed already, but we still need to have a bit more research and innovations there before we can see a real impact on applying bacteriophages as an alternative to antimicrobials. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you so much, Anders. I'm glad we had an expert. So it's been suggested I should explain One Health, and I think the demonstration is here. You have a human doctor talking about AMR, because it matters to humans. You've got people talking about animals, the environment, fish. We're talking about planetary health, everyone's health, and we need to think about it. So I'm going to ask a couple of you in one sentence, because we're going to run out of time. What would you do to bring this up to the same level as climate change? After all, it's as complex, it's as serious. How do we get action? What's the first thing you'd like to see? And I'm going to ask each of you the first thing you'd like to see happen. So, Shahida.
Thank you very much. That's a difficult one. I will probably say we should probably start having daily updates from our Prime Minister, like we've been having with COVID, on the TV on AMR. That's my take.
Well done. I think data makes a big difference. Garda, what's your one thing for trying to get it out there, the complexity?
Actually, to show that we can make change, and that some of the first steps that we can take, even if they are small, we can make a difference. So for me, it's almost like looking positive to the future and showing exemplar, like what Dr. Van has shown, that we can move things.
Thank you. That note of optimism. So don't go to bed and say, I'm giving up. I love it. Mohan, how about you?
I would say really a collective commitment to really help those who produce food so that they produce it responsibly. So the commitment has to be really strong. We can really help the primary producers. Thank you.
Great. Anders?
Well, I think what we need is really to bring all the financial and human health costs to the different Minister of Finances, and then they will realize that they can save a lot of money if they invest in this. Over.
Thank you. So we've heard, everyone, that our global food and health security is at risk in this silent pandemic of AMR. We've heard it's not too late to fight back, but there's no time to wait. Thank you to ICARS, Gamma-Riff, World Fish and others for the pioneering, innovative work you're doing. We need your innovation. We need your ambition. Thanks too to the World Food Prize for bringing us here together. Our challenge to everyone from the panel and me is contribute what you can to making solutions sustainable and scalable. Share good practice, join it up. And after all, if you've heard something new today, then spread the word. Our planet depends on it. But please all sign up to making AMR something we can win against, that is not a problem going forward. Thank you, everyone. A great hour. I've learned lots. Goodbye.